Hi. In this video, I show you how to create REST endpoints that access NetSuite so that you can build your own integrations with that ERP. I'm going to use NetSuite RESTlets, which are server-side scripts that create custom endpoints. RESTlets are written in SweetScript, which is NetSuite's JavaScript-based language for customization and automation. In order to use RESTlets, you need to enable REST Web Services and OAuth 2.2 within NetSuite. So to do that, go to the Setup tab, pick Companies, and then Enable Features. Then go to the Suite Cloud tab and scroll down. And under Suite Talk Web Services, you need to enable REST Web Services. And under Manage Authentication, you're going to need to select OAuth 2.0. Although you could use token-based authentication, OS 2.0 is the preferred approach for REST authentication in modern architectures. So that's what we're going to use in this demo. Next, in order to call the REST endpoints, we need a user, which we call the integration user. And that's an employee record, which is a dedicated service account for integration. And this is an important security step because we want to tightly control what access is provided via REST, and we want an easy way to audit all the REST interactions. So to create the integration user, head over to Lists, Employees, New, to create a new employee, and give this employee a name like OAuth integration user, and an email. Now, an email is required even if the integration user will never log in. So you can use anything. I usually use like a plus, my regular email plus NS for NS integration. But it doesn't really matter since this user is not going to log in. So then you click Save to create it, and you see the employee is successfully saved. It has integration, it has the ID OAuth integration user. The integration user will need a role, an integration role, in order to have the correct permissions to access various objects and call REST web services. So for security purposes, we want to give that role the minimum necessary access. For the integration with Salesforce that I'm working on, I want to be able to create, view, and edit invoices, sales orders, and customers in NetSuite. And so here's how we create a role to enable those permissions. Head to Setup, and then Users, Manage Roles, and create a new role. And I'm going to name this role Integration from Salesforce. For the center type, we want to pick Classic Center. This is the most neutral center, so if you need to log in as this integration user via the UI, you can do that for debugging and setting permissions, and setting up configurations and so on. For accessible subsidiaries, again, we're going to select all just to have the most flexibility. And importantly, under authentication, do not select the web services only role. This will counterintuitively prevent RESTlets from executing and prevent you from logging into the UI to do debugging or configuration. So now that we've got the basic configuration done, we head over to the this permissions tab and over to Setup, where we actually configure the REST Web Services permissions that we need. So we're going to add REST Web Services, level full. We're going to add, for OAuth, we need login using OAuth access tokens. And we're going to add Suite script here as well. And I'm going to give that full access. You may not actually need full access, but just to keep things simple, we'll do that. So that is the basic enablement for OAuth 2 and REST web services. So now we want to actually focus on the objects that we want access to from our REST endpoint. So we go over to transactions, and we said we wanted invoices and sales orders. So invoices, and again, I'm going to make that full so that I can create invoices. Sales order also full. And then we want to also add customers. So customers are not in transactions. The way NetSuite categorizes things, customers are master data, so they'll be under lists. Invoices and sales orders are point in time business events, so they're under transactions. So anyway, we go over to lists and look up customers and full access. So that should do it, and I'm going to save that. And you can see the new role right here, integration from Salesforce. Now that we have our integration role, the last step is to assign that role to our integration user. So to do that, we go to lists, employees, and here's our OAuth integration user. We're going to edit that and scroll down to the bottom where it says access, that sub tab. And here's where we can add the roles. So we're going to look for our integration from Salesforce role. We add it and click save. And that should be it. Now that we have an integration user and a role, we need to create an integration record. And in NetSuite, an integration record defines an entry point for and a security gate for any integration like Salesforce that needs to communicate via API. So what does the integration record do? Well, it generates a unique application ID, a consumer key, and a consumer secret. It also provides an execution log and an access control point where administrators can block an integration simply by changing the state of the integration record to block. So now before we go ahead and create this integration record, let's step back and talk a little bit about what all this is accomplishing. So we are going to be using the OAuth 2 client credentials flow, the so-called machine-to-machine flow. And this is preferred for back-end integrations, automated integrations that do not involve a user interface. So it uses a certificate-based approach instead of the consumer secret for higher security. The consumer key, also called the client ID, will be mapped to a certificate that we generate with a private key and a public key. The public key is then provided to NetSuite so that it can verify incoming requests. So authentication happens using JWT, JSON Web Token, that has this consumer key as its payload, and that's been signed by the private key. And so when NetSuite receives this, it will authenticate it by using the public key, the certificate, to verify that it's been signed correctly. So that's what we're doing. And to get started, we go under Setup, um, to integration and manage integration new. So we'll give the integration a name, something very obvious like integration record for Salesforce. Then on the authentication tab down here, we want to check the client credentials to make sure that we are using machine to machine. Whoops. And we also want to make sure that we uncheck this authorization code grant box, and then make sure that we have RESTlets and REST web services enabled. So that should do it. And if we click save, then the integration is saved successfully. You can see we have an application ID here. And now if we scroll down, you'll see the client credentials. So here's your consumer key and the consumer secret, and you should make copies of those, save them somewhere secure like a password manager where you can find them again, because we're going to need them for the next steps. So as we discussed earlier, now that we have this integration record, we need to generate the private and public key. I am on a Mac, so I will do this in a terminal window using the SSH keygen command. And this can also be done in Windows, and there's a link in the companion blog post that shows you where you can find out that information. It's basically the same thing. You just have to get make sure that SSH keygen is installed on Windows. So anyway, on the Mac, this is the command. It looks like this. More details are in the blog post. It generates the key. It asks you where you want to save it. You can just save it in the default location. It's going to ask you if you want to use a passphrase. You don't need that. In fact, it may be detrimental in this case, so leave it empty. And yeah, that's really all there is to it. You can, if you want, you can view the text of the key, both keys, using the cat command like that. And you might even want to copy these public and private keys into a password manager, just for safekeeping, so you don't lose them. But make sure to always keep the private key. Keep it private. So now that we've generated the credentials, we are going to head over to the M2M machine-to-machine setup and upload our certificate. So we go to Create New, and on the entity, we select the integration user that we've created. Under the role, we pick the role that we've created, integration from Salesforce, and then the application is the integration record that we created in the last step. So then we need to upload the certificate. And to do that, we navigate over to the folder where the certificate was stored. On the Mac, I need to make this visible. So then it's the public key, the certificate that you upload to NetSuite. And once that's uploaded, we click Save. And we're getting this error, unable to parse X509 certificate. Okay, so that failed because we didn't create the key properly. So NetSuite's very finicky about how you create these keys, so you may need to do some trial and error like I did. After reviewing the documentation, I found that you need to use the X509 option to make sure the key's in the right format, and actually also ensure that the expiration of the key is 2 years, so that's 730 days. So here's the new command. And you can find the details for this in the blog post, but I'm just going to run that. And let's see, then it asks a bunch of stuff about country and stuff, which is not relevant. So then you can see that the keys have been created here: NetSuite private key.pem and NetSuite public cert.pem. And now we can try again, create new, and pick our integration user, our integration role, and our integration record. Choose the let's see, the NetSuite public cert. Open that and save, and there you go. You can see the the credentials have finally been set up here. This is an older one that I revoked, and once you revoke them, it's permanent. You can't delete them. But so this is the active one now. It's not revoked, and so we should be able to use that to make our REST calls to NetSuite. Okay, now that we have NetSuite set up for REST API calls, we're going to actually make some. And the first step in that process is to get an access token. We're going to demo everything in just using Postman. And Postman does not have a built-in capability to generate assigned JWT for authentication. So we're going to we created a little script in Node.js to do that, and we're going to get that JWT signed token, paste it into Postman, and then get our access token. So the code is in GitHub, and in a repository called NetSuite JWT. The URL is here, and you can also find the details in the companion blog post to this video. So everything you need to know is in the README about how to use this. I'm just going to step through real quickly and show you how things are configured. So we use the information that we've put in NetSuite to generate our signed JWT. And that includes things like the account ID. That's just your NetSuite account ID. So if you look over in NetSuite, that's like this little number or text that's at the beginning of your URL. The consumer key, so that's what we uploaded when we created the M2M client credentials setup. And the certificate ID, that comes from the integration where we put in our OAuth 2 client credentials. That's the public key part of it, the certificate that we uploaded. The private key is stored on a path in the file system. So there's more instructions about how to do that in the blog post. Expiration in seconds is 1800, 30 minutes usually. There is a scope that you can define in a particular algorithm that was used when you generated your certificate for signing the JW key. So when we generated our key pair, we used, I'll scroll down here, we used an algorithm called PS256. That's kind of the standard algorithm. So that is what we've put into our configuration. And the scope is dependent on what kind of REST calls you're trying to make. So there's a few options: REST Web Services, RESTlets for accessing RESTlets, and Suite Analytics for Suite Analytics Connect. So you can combine multiple scopes together. For the purposes of this, we're just going to use REST Web Services. So that is the code, and then you can once you have it all set up, you can run it. I have it set up here in my IDE, which happens to be Cursor, and you can see here's the configuration that I was just talking about. What you do is you copy that into your own config.json. You populate it with your own information here, and then you run it. Using this command, node generate jwt.js, and you'll see that it outputs a bunch of information. So JWT debug information, stuff that you may need to enter into Postman. Here is actually the signed JWT that we'll use for NetSuite, and then some information about putting this into Postman. So I'm going to copy this and paste it into Postman. So it goes into, so the body here has to have these three keys: the grant type, the client assertion type, which you can see here is a specific string required by NetSuite. You can get that, more details on that in the blog post. And then here's the client assertion. So I'm going to paste my signed JWT in there, and then when I click send, I get back an access token, and this is going to be the token that I use to pass into NetSuite for authentication purposes when I'm calling a REST service, and that will be the next step. Okay, so now that we know how to get an access token, we can proceed to calling a RESTlet from within Postman. But first we need to write and deploy one. So in the GitHub repository that we just talked about, there are also a couple of RESTlets. So the one we're going to use is shown here. It's called get first 10 GL accounts, and it's a simple RESTlet that searches through all of the GL accounts, puts them in alphabetical order, and returns the first 10. So this is a public repo. You can clone it. The details you'll find in the blog post about how to do that, and you can deploy this yourself. So we'll go through how to do that. The README file in here has under the NetSuite folder, the README file shows you everything you need to know about how to deploy the RESTlets. We use the Suite Cloud CLI, and it shows you here how to install it. And the basic deployment is you go into the NetSuite folder, and you just do Suite Cloud project deploy. So I'm going to switch over to our IDE, and we'll do that. So here we are in the IDE, and we just enter Suite Cloud project deploy from the NetSuite directory, and you'll see it's deploying the project. Just takes a minute. Okay, now that's completed, so the RESTlet is deployed. Actually, if you wanted to go over into NetSuite, we can see what that looks like. So in NetSuite, we will go under customization, under scripting, and look at script deployments just to check and make sure. So here we can see custom deploy, get first 10 accounts has been deployed. So now we can head over to Postman and see how we call the RESTlet. So again, like we did earlier, we need to first get an access token, and so the one that we did before is expired, or assume it's expired by now. So we'll start over. We're going to go back to our little script that generates the signed JWT. We go and grab that. And then back to Postman, we put that in the client assertion header. We click send. And we now have a brand new access token, which we will use to call the RESTlet. So the RESTlet uses the endpoint of the script that we deployed, and it's a GET request. So the most important thing here is under authorization. We want to have bearer token authorization, and paste in our new access token. And if we click send, we'll see that it returns the first 10 GL accounts here. Oh, the only other thing to mention is under headers, you need to have content type be application JSON. If you don't do that, if you don't pass that header, you'll get an error. So, but yeah, so that's how that works. So as you've seen in this video, calling RESTlets in NetSuite requires a fair amount of setup. And the best way to think about it is an investment in time that unlocks a very powerful mechanism for integrating external platforms like Salesforce with NetSuite. So here we've used Postman to illustrate how to authenticate and make REST calls. And Postman is a useful tool for debugging and testing, but obviously if you're building applications, you would manage the authentication and outbound REST calls in your code. So you won't be cutting and pasting signed JWT and access tokens around. And so anyway, look to future videos to see kind of where we go with this as a next step, and actually building some integrations between Salesforce and NetSuite. So there is a companion blog post to this video, and if you want to go through these steps in detail, recreate this for yourself, I strongly suggest you check it out. You can find the URL in the comments below this YouTube video, or you can see right here is the URL where you can find it. So thanks for joining, and good luck with your NetSuite integrations.